Well, we're now moving on to our next presentation. So thanks so much to judges and presenting panel. The next presenter we have is Chris Idso from the Capital, who is the Capital Facilities Manager at the Washington State Department of Corrections. In his role as the Facilities Manager at Stafford Creek Correction Center, he began to understand the dilemma regarding institutional waste and the opportunity to affect change. I think we're going to find out about it in this presentation, which I'm pretty excited about. Yeah,
we'll take that as a
ready
yes.
to go.
All right. Well, I've got a lot to show you, so I'll try to talk very quickly. Thank you for the introduction, and certainly thank you for inviting me. This was a real quick turnaround on this. It happened just over the last 3 or 4 weeks where I shared something with Heather, and it appeared like they were interested. So I resurrected an old PowerPoint and I tried to update it a little bit, but I will say going in that it's a bit elemental maybe for this group. So bear with me. I'll also say that this was a kind of a prison story. I'm calling it solid waste management, but it was more of a prison operation story. We went into it just with this mindset of saving money. We really weren't trying to create a revenue stream, and we've tried to stay true to that mindset. We were looking at ways to create meaningful jobs because we've got a lot of people in prisons and not necessarily meaningful jobs for all of them. And then this particular presentation was really created to share with other corrections agencies, other facilities around the state, just to show them what we went through, because we were fairly innovative. We were some of the first to do this. And so it was built. And so as you look at my slides, keep that in mind. We did work with the Department of Ecology in Washington State. They helped us do some waste audits to learn what was going on with our trash. And then we also worked with the Department of Health locally in Grace Harbor County for permitting issues, so they get some of the credit for what we've done. And ultimately, we started calling it garbage archaeology. We just didn't know what was in the trash. So let me see if I can get through these. Try to advance the slides here. There we go. So Stafford Creek is out here at Grace Harbor County. I'm telecommuting from the beach right now, and I live about 10 miles from that facility. Like Andy said, I work out of headquarters now, but all of this work I'm going to show you was done at Stafford Creek. It's about a 210 acre facility with about 100 acres inside that perimeter fence. The top, you can see where the composting unit is at, and then our sorting area we buried right inside the facility. About 2,000 guys are incarcerated there, and we have about 500 staff. First thing we looked at is really how do we collect the garbage? We were using dumpsters. That's what everybody uses in a commercial setting. Campuses are pretty standard. We towed them around with a tractor, dumped them into a big compactor, and away they went. Didn't think much about it for the first 10 years of operation. So we knew we had to convert. So that's what the totes were about, right? Totes, you can't put a lot of big things in them. The desk, I'll show you later, there's a story about that. So we worked to convert the facilities to the totes. We made this universal recycle tote. It's really just the ability to put anything that's recyclable in there. It helps us on kind of a pre-sorting idea. We have a lot of security documents, and so each area has one of those secure shred, just because there's a lot of information about people. We're a people business, and so we have a lot of security documents that have to get shredded. We learned right away that it's easier if we can build cages and have some of the bigger areas pre-sort for us. So we did a lot of work with that. There was a bit of money invested, but I think there's tin cans in those, probably some plastics on that last one, and then probably some milk cartons, which are pretty hard to recycle, but we still fight and work through that. So a lot of cages. The sorting center, which I'll get to in a second, does require the processing is out of dumpsters. So of course, now that we've got it all into these nice totes that the incarcerants can move around the facilities on their own, we have to put it back in the dumpster because that's how we process it. We've got tippers that put these dumpsters on the line. So we just use a loading dock that's inside the facility. We have these guys roll the totes up there and dump them in. Pretty simple. And then we needed a sorting center. So we found used equipment, right? We went to the state surplus. We're part of the Washington State Consortium with WSU, which is a kind of a used site or a site where you can pick up used things. We got a greenhouse from a facility from that site. So we're pretty thrifty. It's hard for us to get the legislature to support stuff like this. So we begged and borrowed our way into a full sorting line, 2 tippers, an upright conveyor, and then we had the baler, the big compactor you can see there. The script is really just geared towards other facilities. The idea is not going to be big enough. It's going to be a big mess. The officers in prisons don't like it. It's an area where there's lots of contraband. So we put cameras everywhere in there. We try to monitor, but suffice it to say, when you've got a 2-to-1 or a 5-to-1 ratio in these facilities, 1 staff to 5 or 6 incarcerates, it's hard to watch them all the time. So that's an operation. Tipped on one end, goes across the line, it's sorted. The other end, I'll show you in a second. That's the stuff that we tip in that we don't want sorted. That's this. We need that ability to not have to sort things, whether it's contraband or things we just don't want their hands to be on. But that's really just a picture of that. And you can't see them, but there's about 6 cameras in there. So there may not be a staff person in there, but they're being monitored and recorded. Hot trash in a facility is basically anything that you just don't want these guys to have. And so we had to take that into consideration. That trash could be anything from metal that they can sharpen to maybe food waste that they really shouldn't have access to, or we shred most of the documents, but there are some things that end up broken tools, anything that's sharp. They have a proclivity to sharpen and use things in a negative way. So this was really just about showing these other facilities that you need to have a good hot trash process. We learned about plastic bags right away. That was the biggest downfall that we came across. The idea that we use them. I think we did kind of about a $45,000 savings. If we can keep it up, it's hard because you go back to old habits if you're not watching all the time. But that's about what the facility was spending on plastic liners. And we learned right away, plastic liners kind of choke up this whole process. They do not work well in a sorting line. So if you can get rid of those, that was our recommendation. And then this is just the simple sorting. These are the guys, they have control over the line. They can start it and stop it and slow it down. They do better if you're monitoring them, but we just don't have enough staff to watch all the time. So this is right out in the open. It can be seen. There's no walls on the building. It's kind of disgusting in a way, but if you know anything about trash, if you're monitoring it correctly and the people that are throwing trash away are given simple rules, then you can keep the trash pretty clean. We try to do a wet trash, dry trash. We try to keep things out of it. They're going to make it gross. But it is what it is. We learned quickly that it takes a lot of material to make a bale, right? And bale becomes that recycled product. And the more you can, break that down into the different sub-elements of the different types of plastics, the better off you'll be. So again, we're back to making cages and storing. Prisons don't like to store stuff. Storing things creates hiding areas. Storing stuff creates camouflage and visual distractions. So we try to keep it at a minimum, but we do like to make those big size commercial bales. Just a little bit of the further sorting. We're learning about the plastics. We're learning about, how we were sending so much stuff to China and China wasn't doing anything with it. And they finally kind of put the choke on that and said, we're not going to take your stuff anymore. So they're really specific about what they'll take. So finding a market for this stuff is becoming tricky. But like I said, in the beginning, we didn't get into this to try to make any revenue. This for us was all about diverting the waste stream. $150 a ton tipping fee, typically into the landfill, give or take. And that's what we were trying to get away from. There's a couple examples of different things. There's some companies that like those chip bags. They can make stuff out of them. This is where it got interesting for us. This is where I go back to the archaeology part, right? The garbage archaeology. We didn't know what was in the garbage. And so as a taxpayer, you all should be looking at these pictures. That's hundreds of dollars worth of clothing, linen, blankets. This is what we issue them to live in a prison, right? We're responsible to give them this stuff. And it was going out with garbage. If it was used up, they'd throw it away. We did not have a good process for catching that. It was going in the garbage in all kinds of different ways. And so we kind of started to learn how to work upstream, right? So we started tagging dumpsters so that we could track back to where it came from, so that we could cork those problems. This is another one, right? Sporks and forks and knives and stuff in the kitchen, the different trays, library books, right? We're a part of the state library system, and you know, we don't have any right to throw those books away. Textbooks, we see those a lot. That's a tough one. Mostly recyclable. Textbooks are constantly being rewritten and upgraded, but didn't need to be in the waste stream. Contraband, this is the things, like I've said before, the hot trash. This is a great place where hot trash should be going, but it was ending up in the regular garbage and on the line, which is, again, being sorted by incarcerants who have access to the stuff that we've just collected from them that they're not supposed to have. Top picture there on the left is chewing tobacco. We're a tobacco-free facility, except officers or staff can bring in chewing tobacco, no smoking tobacco. They're supposed to haul it out with them, but containers like that end up in the garbage. Now, the guys will take that and dry it and sell it or smoke it. It's disgusting, but that's our reality. Search report, top right picture, just shows things that were taken out of a cell that they weren't supposed to have, put them back in the garbage, and now we put it back into their hands. So this was kind of a security slide. Medications, those are supposed to go back to medical if they're not being used. Here's one of the most interesting ones for us. This was this idea that things were being thrown away that were probably repairable, reusable, and I should have one more line in there that says recyclable. There was a bunch of stuff that we could fix. We found one of the first dumpsters tipped on the line had a desk in it. This is a housing unit doing a spring cleaning and using the dumpster like their pickup truck when they're going to the dump with their dad on a Saturday. It didn't solve any problem. It just put it to us, but it was going to the dump before we found out about it. Office chairs, often maybe the back broke, but the bottom broke on another one, so we could put them together to make a good one. Mop buckets for 120 bucks a copy, and it was a spring that was bad on that. Consumables, this was a tragic thing for us, right? The idea that consumables were being thrown away before they were done. Those are mop packs on the left picture, toilet paper, 30, 40 cents a roll. We pay for the state, and then paper towels. We were finding that the janitors, the incarcerate janitors, would pull the roll out just before it got emptied, because they could put a full roll in and then know that they had another hour or two before they'd have to go check on it. And then they could use that hour to go play checkers or something, but it was wasting consumables that we didn't know about it. So again, archaeology. Annually, that's about what we figured, and it proved out to be pretty true to that. You know, corking up those different problems and keeping your eye on it. Its slippage is pretty easy. If you're not watching all the time, they'll go back to old habits. This is the bales. Like I said, we try to build all our bales into that marketable size. We've got a couple of brokers that we work with, just local guys that take them for us. We get very little money. We're not into it for the money. Never got into it for the money. We're saving money. That's what it was about, diverting from the landfill. And then processes that the inmates, the incarcerants can do without us having to supervise it. So we don't give them forklifts. We just give them a little pallet jack and they can move them around. And then we'll come in at the end of the day and grab that trailer with 6 or 8 bales on it. So the other half, the food waste, right? Or the other half of the garbage is food waste. That's typically about what the number is. Half of what we were sending to the landfill was the food waste. So we had to build that whole process, and this goes to the composting. So we started in the kitchen. We built an assorting table all by hand, and just basically showed them how to take that garbage apart and put food waste in one and the garbage in the other, and try not to send the tumbler out to us. Goes out through the vehicle sally port, which is the checkpoint for security. Officers thoroughly check it. Pretty simple picture there. I'm going to say maybe 1,500 pounds a day, give or take, is what we were sending out. That's before it's been dewatered. We use a BW Drum Composter. We put it in 2009 at Stafford Creek, and had to learn about composting. We worked with the Department of Health and brought in some experts that kind of taught us the science. You know, Mother Nature really developed it. We're just trying to emulate it with these systems. One of the first things we realized is you got to dewater it. It doesn't do very well if it's got too much moisture in it. So we pulp it as much as we can. We've got equipment that pulps it, and then we'll just stack it like that and cover it with concrete or something and presses it out. Gives us the ability to take a dry material and mix it the next day with the food chips or the wood chips. We use wood chips as our carbon product. We have a ratio that we use. It's just a basic per yard. You know, we weigh the food waste. There's a scale there. We'll weigh the food waste, and then we'll put a certain amount of wood chips with it. Goes into the BW composter, that drum. It turns really slow, about 3 or 4 full rotations a day. As we load it, we take out the same amount of product out the other end each day, and then that goes into some static piles. We monitor the temperature. These are guys learning about science. We're hoping to say that these are transferable skill sets. If nothing else, it's just giving them a meaningful job that's less than cleaning toilet, or better than cleaning toilets and maybe working in the kitchen, which most guys have to do sometime at. So they learn a lot about this. At Stafford Creek, we do static piles. After that, so it gets up to temperature in the drum. It meets all the Department of Health requirements, which was 131 degrees for 3 days, kills all the negative E. coli's and salmonellas and stuff. Then it goes into these static bins, ultimately getting sorted after about 4 or 5 weeks. As soon as the temperature drops, and in summertime, it can be a little quicker. We screen it really tight because we don't want to make a bunch of compost, and we don't want to have to buy a bunch of wood chips. So we screen it really tight. The finished product on that picture on the right shows that it's a really nice compost. There's no wood chips in it. So when we're done, we're taking 1,500 pounds of food waste a day, and we turn it into about 1 yard of that product on the right per month. We only produce about 12 to 15 yards of compost per month for that whole facility. We use it on site. We don't sell it. We don't ship it anywhere. We don't have permits to do that. So it's a great process. That's one of my favorite processes. And we have spread that to all the rest of the state.
Hi, Chris. This is Andy. Sorry to interrupt. You've got a 2-minute warning.
2-minute warning. Okay. So this is just some tips on what to consider for sorting. I won't go through them all. It was really prison-based. Composting, again, it was a prison-based slideshow, so I won't go through that. This is some of the, so all 12 state facilities are composting right now. About half of them are using what's called a Dairy Tech drum. We've got a couple BW drums out there. We're doing some earth drums. That's a typical earth tub. The new Dairy Tech was developed using our help because we needed something that composted food waste. Most composters weren't necessarily just using food waste. They were also using solid waste from your sanitary sewer. These are the 12 facilities around the state. I threw that in there just to give you an idea where they're at. A couple of community partnership programs that we do that also caught some interest. We're really keen on these community partnership programs, right? These are these ideas where with a small stipend each month, we partner with these companies or these nonprofits. They'll give us $200 or $300, and then we turn out these products. So Wheels for the World is a Johnny and Friends program out of California. It's a nonprofit that ships wheelchairs all over the world, mostly third world countries. The idea is simply to take what's potentially unusable. The insurance markets in the US don't want them. They want you to rent or lease or buy newer ones. And so a lot of these just become junk. So Johnny developed this years ago. We just signed into it and became a partner with them. And it's a great program, and there's a lot of people that are benefiting from it. Local one for us is the Lions Club. They like this bicycle. We do about 400 or 500 bicycles a year, sometimes more. And again, bicycles are another one that end up in the landfill. We can take any bicycle and restore it to better than new. These guys do incredible work with them, and they're all donated locally in Grace Harbor County. And then this is the SPP program that we do. We're growing plants for the Southwest Washington prairies. Not necessarily a waste reduction, but it's just a neat one that I like to talk about because my true nature is a horticulturalist. That's my background. That's where my life came from before prison. So that's all the slides. I raced through those so that we could have a minute for questions.
Thanks so much, Chris. We do have a question, and I'm going to have to give you 30 seconds only, unfortunately. But I wondered whether you could tell us about what happens with the clothing. Do you have a sort of a similar program for textiles and fabrics?
So the clothing, if it's usable, goes right back and gets washed, or repaired, and then reissued. So when these guys come to prison, they don't necessarily get new. They get issuable, which means it could be new or it could be, put back into use because it's been repaired. All clothing is made at one prison, and if the clothing is no longer repairable, it'll go back to its original location, which is that prison, and then they do recycle it. So at a certain point, it either gets cut up into rags or recycled or goes out. And there's a pretty healthy recyclable market for linens and clothing.
Great. Thanks so much for your presentation. Definitely thought-provoking. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, absolutely. I love talking about this stuff. Thank you very much.